Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with a brand new figure. Well, I guess it's not exactly brand new. It's been out for like maybe 2 months or so, maybe even about 3 months, I'm not too sure. But this is the Eofauna Tyrannosaurus Rex. Now this figure was one that initially I was very excited about until we started to see more and more images of it. And then I kind of like grew a little sour on it, and I just wasn't all that excited about it anymore. There was just something that just looked so off about the figure, and there are numerous issues with this one that I wasn't a big fan of coming into this. So I just waited a very long time to get a hold of it. I ordered this one from Dan's Dinosaurs, and he recently got them into stock, so I went ahead and got a hold of it, and of course it was here. Like, Dan is a super fast shipper. It was here in like maybe a day or two after he shipped it. But I finally now have the chance to see this one in person, and I will say it does look a little bit better in person than I was expecting it to look, but it does still definitely have some of the problems that I was, a little bit concerned about coming into the figure. Some of the things that I was a little concerned about look better, but some of them look just as bad, maybe even a little bit worse. But let's go ahead, as always, and jump to a closer look, and we'll check it out from there. So starting up here at the head sculpt of the T-Rex, you can see one thing that, Eofauna definitely did was give us a really nice amount of fine detail for the T-Rex. And I will say that the skin texture and everything looks really quite nice overall, especially how we have some, much finer skin texture there in the eye area and the upper part of the snout. And then as you lead closer to the jawline, you have those larger scales, something that, we often see with Tyrannosaurs. And you can also see the nostrils are sculpted out quite nicely. That looks really good. The eye area as a whole looks really quite nice. We've got some nicely painted eyes with like an orangish tone, and then given a black pupil, and they're very small eyes. So it is nice to see the paint as precise and quite nicely placed as it is. Though when you look at it from the front, you can see the eyes are definitely a little bit wonky, so they don't look perfectly like they should, but they still don't look terrible. We've also got some pretty decent coloration here for the faces. We have a very dark tone, kind of like a black, but then there's also some slight mixtures of browns. And that's one thing that I will definitely give credit where it's deserved for this figure, is the paintwork from Eofauna looks so much nicer in person. Still not amazing, but a lot nicer in person than I was expecting it to. Like, they've done a great job of adding in variation of color in different areas that I honestly didn't even notice on the original prototype version, which looks really good, especially as you move up along the top. I had no idea initially that there was this cool light gray that they have going on with a really neat patterning, like a neat striping effect as you move down along the back of the T-Rex, and I think that looks really, really neat. And I also didn't even notice initially when looking at the figure, it's the fact that there's actually like proto feathers, like very small early sort of style feathering up here on the top of the T-Rex, which again surprised me a little bit when I first popped it out of the packaging and had taken a look at it. I didn't notice that in the earlier images of it, so that just kind of surprised me a bit. But one area you probably are picking out straight away that is a bummer for this figure, and it honestly stands out like a sore thumb, is this massive seam in the neck. And I'm not really sure why they have this seam. Sometimes figures can look okay with seams, but this one just like stands out to me so badly, and I'm not sure why it's so obvious. I also don't know why there wasn't really an attempt to kind of cover that seam up and hide it a little better, because it's just like the ugliest of seams I think that you could possibly find on a dinosaur figure would be that one. But you can see the ear is sculpted nicely right there at least. Another area that I was definitely concerned about, and I will say doesn't look that great here in person, would be the articulated jaw and the way that they've gone ahead and created it. The articulated jaw is a very different style articulated jaw compared to any previously released Tyrannosaur that I recall, where you can see that the jaw kind of goes in here, and it almost is like a cool idea, and I have to give props to Eofauna for trying to come up with something a little bit new and a little bit different. There's never any hatred from me when it comes to a company trying something new, because you have to innovate, you want to lead, you don't want to be a follower. But in this case, it's also one of those situations where not everything is a home run on its first try, and you can see the articulated jaw, and the way it looks on the figure just does look really awkward. The only saving grace I would say for it is the fact that the articulated jaw has such dark tones around it that you almost can't pick up on the seams as obvious as you might. Like over here, you can really see it quite obviously, but you know, when you look at it from the side, it doesn't stand out quite as much as you might expect. It looks a little bit worse, I think, when you open the jaw. Now all of a sudden it's a little bit more visible. Not so much on this side, but the other side, I can definitely see it a little bit more. It doesn't look that bad. Like, not as bad as I was thinking it was going to, but I think I like the, you know, standard style articulated jaw a little bit better. But like I said, I do have to give them some props for trying something a little bit different. Now, once we do open the mouth, here's another area that I do have to take a little bit of an issue with. First of all, we've got some very interesting paintwork for the inside of the mouth because we have a pinkish tone in there and a nice gloss coat, but you can see that there is like this crazy speckling that they've given the inside of the mouth with like a black, and it is absolutely everywhere. Again, it's one of those instances where I feel like they were just trying something a little bit different, maybe to add a little color variation, but I feel like rather than doing whatever this is, they probably should have just applied like a reddish wash or something and allowed that red to kind of creep in and out of all of the detail in there. And I just feel like it would have looked a little bit better, a little bit more natural. I do like the gloss coat used, but that is just a little bit strange to me. But the worst part of the inside of the mouth would be the teeth. I think the teeth do not look good. Like, they've had much better teeth on, like, the Giganotosaurus in the past and everything, and even though that wasn't great, it was really nice, but you can see the teeth are just, like, very strange looking for being the teeth of a Tyrannosaur. They're very small, very rounded, and just don't look very good. They do look a little better on the lower jaw. I can definitely say that, but not so great there on the upper jaw. But I will give them, again, some props just in general for the way the articulated jaw works, because as you can see, once it is closed, it does close very nicely. But anyway, now that we move from the area where I would say is probably the biggest problem area for the figure, you can also see, again, a little bit of like an orangish brown up here on the snout. But as you move back into the body, you can see the skin texture does look really nice, specifically down here in the throat. I think the detailing down here looks really good. The way that they've wrinkled and creased all the skin moving down through the throat does look really nice. And originally I was thinking that I wasn't going to like the coloration because it just looked so bright and like awkward having kind of like goldish tones on a T-Rex, but in person, that is one thing that I will say I was wrong about. I think the color looks a lot better and a lot more natural on the figure here in hand. Of course, I feel like they could have come up with a better color scheme, but overall, I definitely don't dislike it the way I initially was. And they do have this very interesting patterning going on as you move through, where this mixture of like blacks and browns just kind of like basically scribbles all over the dinosaur, like it's all over the place as you move down. And it's definitely a unique looking color scheme, no doubt about that. But as you move down, you can see the arms are sculpted out very nice, very small. The nails are painted with a black. You can see the arms are of course small, and the arms are pretty much overtaken from the elbow down with a very dark brownish tone, or a black, kind of looks more like a dark brown. As you move up into the stomach, we definitely have some beefiness to the T-Rex, but when you get nice and close, you can see the scale detail looks really, really good. It really does pop quite nicely on the figure and stands out really nicely. There's all sorts of very impressive skin detail as well, especially with the leg pushing into the stomach. You can see as you move along this area of the stomach how the skin is all wrinkling and everything moving up, and the transitions are pretty smooth. And one thing that, again, is also something I didn't notice in the original prototype images is there is a little variation of color to the body. As you can see, more of like almost like an orangish tone, like an orangish yellow here, but then it transitions to a bit of a lighter yellowish tone, and you kind of see that as you move through the figure. And even on the underside, I feel like it has like a slightly lighter variation of color down here. They've also applied a nice dark wash, and on the underside specifically, I can say that you can really appreciate how nice the detail is, and as well as that dark wash. Up here, it's a little harder, honestly, to pick out the detail because there is just so much going on with the paint apps. You can see the hip bone right here. As you move down, you've got the muscle definition, but it's not, you know, overly defined to the point where it looks shrink wrapped or anything. You've got the skin stretching there off of the tail. Very big muscular looking leg for the Rex. You can see that darker tone overtakes the front of the leg, moving down over the knee, down through the shin, and then down into the foot sculpt. The foot sculpt looks pretty nice. We've got like some scoots moving down the toes. The nails have a nice black, and the feet have kind of like a mixture of like a gray and a black. It starts out with a black, but then as it transitions down, becomes more of like a darker variation of a gray. So you can now really notice the difference in color between the feet and the nails. And of course, we do have dew claws, which you can see right there. And then as you move back up, you lead out into the tail. You again have this kind of like lighter variation of a yellow leading out, and then you've got like the black kind of creeping and striping down. This area looks a little bit iffy to me, just as far as the way that those black stripes are applied, but it doesn't look too terrible. And then as you lead out there toward the tip of the tail, you get a lot more of that black kind of striping down. You've got a nice curve to the tail as well. Very natural looking curve, I would say. If you turn the Rex around, it is now kind of facing its head away from us a little bit, so it has a nice turn in the neck, but just a slight turn. You can see again even more variation of color up here. You can even see almost like orangish tones popping up here and there in the neck as you move back. And I do actually quite like the coloration as you move down. And again, you lead into the body. The arm is held in pretty much the same spot over here. The only real big difference on this side compared to the other side is the positioning of the leg. As this leg is picking up off of the ground, you can see how the toes are leaving the ground. As the Rex is taking a step, you can see the skin stretching off of the stomach. And again, how nice that dark wash has really brought out the detail and made each and every crack and crevice in the skin texture and scale detail pop quite nicely. You lead back again, you've got some more creasing back here behind the thigh, and then you lead out again into the tail right there. So I would definitely say it is a really nicely sculpted T-Rex for sure, with a few issues like the teeth, the lower jaw, the articulated jaw kind of looking a little bit weird, and then of course that seam. But past that point, I would say the sculpt is actually quite phenomenal. And then you do also get a base, and you can see the base is basically just like a nice earthy area. You could see like some twigs and stuff down there. Not a whole lot as far as color variation goes. We basically have a dark brown and then kind of like a khaki or something that's been dry brushed over. And that's about it really, but it does look really nice and definitely helps to elaborate the detail quite nicely. And there are two pegs, and you can see one peg's a little bit longer, one peg is a little bit thicker, and they kind of basically tell you what foot would go where when you look at the size of the holes on the undersides of the feet. But definitely a pretty cool base to go with a fairly decent Rex. You've also got a really nice card on the inside of the packaging here that you can see again shows off the Rex. Some very cool artwork for it, as well as some interesting stats, I guess, down here. And then you've got the Eofauna logo on the back. And then you also have this little tag that goes with it. Again, Eofauna Scientific Research, Tyrannosaurus Sue, 1/35th scale. And if you open it up, you can see there's all sorts of information and everything in there on the T-Rex. So something fun that you get to read if you would like to read that with your Rex. I am going to put it back onto the base here and bring it back in. I'm just going to keep the tags on it. I will say the base allows the Rex to be super sturdy. Like, there are absolutely no balancing issues with this Rex. It stands on here very nicely. As far as the size goes, lengthwise, you are looking at about, I would say, around 13 inches or about 33 centimeters. And then for a height, about 5 inches or just a hair under 13 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect A human being next to our Eofauna Tyrannosaurus Rex. And you can see again, at 1/35th scale, it's pretty much the exact size range you would expect it to be in. And to further show you that, there is Wilson from PNSO, which you can very clearly see is of a very similar size to Sue from Eofauna. You can see both of these Rexes are very, very similar in size. I honestly wouldn't mind grabbing another one of these Eofauna Tyrannosaurs at some point and giving it a paint application closer to what we see on the PNSO version, because even though everybody, hates the fact that we always have brown dinosaurs from PNSO, I personally do prefer the coloration of Wilson over the Eofauna Rex. Even though the Eofauna Rex does have more unique coloration, I just feel like the coloration of Wilson just looks a little bit more natural, maybe easier on the eyes. I'm not really sure how to term it, but I just like that color a little better. And then we've got a pretty cool comparison here as we have the Eofauna Triceratops next to the T-Rex. When it comes to an Eofauna comparison, I would absolutely expect you guys to want to see this one because, again, the two dinosaurs that are almost like the most iconic rivals ever would be the Rex and Triceratops, and you can see how they size up next to each other. And then we've got the Eofauna, Tyrannosaurus, and Giganotosaurus here next to each other, and you can definitely see that the Giga is, as expected, a bit larger, at least a bit longer than our Rex. The Rex, I would say, is definitely bulkier than the Giga, but definitely a bit longer for the Giganotosaurus over the Rex. But they both look really cool next to each other, I can say that. And man, I forgot how gorgeous that Eofauna Giganotosaurus is. It is absolutely beautiful. So this brand new Eofauna Tyrannosaurus Rex Sue is a pretty cool figure, but you know, it's definitely not the best Rex out there, I would say. Although it is, you know, a Rex with lips, and that's something that most people at this point are just aching for, is a nice Tyrannosaurus with lips. Even though we do have the reborn version, which is absolutely phenomenal as well. Wouldn't really size up too well next to this one, though, as the reborn version is a good bit larger. But the Rex here from Eofauna, again, is kind of a mixed bag overall. But as far as my personal feelings go for this one, I was definitely expecting not to like it, but I will say in person I do like it better than I thought I would, and I think some areas, especially like the paintwork specifically, is a lot nicer in person than I was expecting it to be. So even though I'm not the biggest fan of the tones of color used, I still think it looks pretty natural in person, and Eofauna definitely proved me wrong as far as that goes. I think, you know, a lot of the images and stuff I had seen of it previously maybe just kind of were a little bit too bright and didn't really show off how, you know, I don't know if I would say it's not dull, but it's not as unrealistically bright as I was expecting it to be. So it does look a lot more natural in person as far as the colors go. The Rex does still have that fairly ugly seam up there in the head, and the awkward looking lower jaw, the articulated jaw, still doesn't look very good, and the teeth on the inside of the mouth don't look that great, and I'm not a big fan of that speckling coloration they have going on the inside of the mouth either. But once you move past that, the Rex is extremely highly detailed. It does sport some absolutely fantastic detailing. Some detail I honestly don't even know if you can truly appreciate because of the colors. There's just so much going on with the paintwork of the figure that I feel like it doesn't really give the sculpt its due justice, because there is so much really nice fine detail that you almost don't even notice until you do get it close and you really inspect it. And once you do that, I feel like you'll have a whole new appreciation for the amount of, you know, time that was put into the sculpt and fine detail included on this Rex. And it does look really vibrant as far as the detail goes as well. The figure also has a pretty nice pose to it, but it's nothing amazing, nothing incredible, just a nice walking pose. A nice base included as well. Again, nothing incredible there either, but it looks good with the Rex and is extremely sturdy. Like, it really doesn't have any issues. Sometimes you'll get a Rex that has like pegs like that, and you put it on the pegs and they, you know, start to kind of fall over or something, or like bend and warp. I've had this now for a few days, and it's still standing just as nicely as it was the moment I got it. Of course, you know, over the course of a year or two, things could change, but as of right now, it is standing perfectly, and it's very stable on the base. So overall, again, a pretty cool Rex, and one that I can say, even though it does have some issues, is definitely worth picking up. And of course, if you are going to pick it up, you can pick it up from the same place that I did, and that would be Dan's Dinosaurs. So if you want to grab this, I will include a link in the description to where you can purchase it from Dan right now. So make sure you check that link, go pick up this Rex, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.